Hi there, my name is Lauren Stanley, and this is my report on methods to reduce D and F rates in my classroom. And I attend Alliant University, and my professor is Dr. Riva Dayanera. Alrighty, so for our overview, first we're going to cover the research questions, then next we'll cover the hypothesis, then next the literature summary, then next the data tables, data collection, then data analysis and treatment, and lastly, outcomes and goals. And alrighty, so for the research question, the main important question would be what actions are effective in reducing D and F rates? And there are some sub questions that go with that because we want to be looking at different intervention strategies. And some would be what are the effects of reflection questions? What are the effects of alternative work packets? What are the effects of in-person tutoring support through EduCares? What are the effects of online tutoring support through the paper app? What are the effects of alternative assignment packets? Sorry, we already covered that one. And then what are the effects of teacher-hosted study halls on current grades and other intervention strategies? And then the next thing that we're going to go over is the hypothesis. And I think it would be important to remember equity versus equality because every student is going to need something different. There's a mosaic of different family situations or home situations, so there definitely is going to be a mosaic of different strategies that will work for each student. And I think part of understanding my students or part of serving my students would be to understand them. And my prediction would be that alternative work packets and important conversations and also building relationships would be more effective than other methods. But other methods would still have an important role in improving student outcomes. And I think I would need to define meaningful conversation. So if a student who is falling behind comes in, then I would definitely need to talk to them about what it is that's keep holding them back, what's going on with them. And I think I would be better able to offer them interventions based on each situation. Alrighty, so the next would be the literature summary. So for educators, becoming immersed in literature is good practice for professional development, according to Mertler. And another study looks at critical transitions. So according to Silver, Saunders, and Zarate, there are important critical transitions that happen for students. These transitions could be the transition from elementary school to middle school, from middle school to high school, and so on. Other important critical transitions could be changing zip codes, possibly changing home situations. Those would be critical transitions that would impact student outcomes. Another study looked at the impacts of reflection questions, and this study found a small positive impact with reflection questions. And there was another study from the LA Unified School District when they were looking at what to do to help students bounce back from the pandemic. They were finding credit recovery to be very effective, and then also participation in career programs. Alrighty, and another important factor would be building in positive relationships with students. So this study will use both close-ended and open-ended questions. However, we will use more close-ended questions with defined answers to make the analysis a bit easier and faster. So an example of one of these questions would be number 7, which would be, do you feel that the instructor was understanding of situations and made extensions when necessary? 1 would be a score of extremely unsatisfactory, 2 would be unsatisfactory, 3 would be neutral, 4 would be satisfactory, 5 would be excellent, and so on. So so students could choose their responses, and then number 7 would correspond to column number 7. So each data table will each question will be each column will represent a different question in the data set. And, just for consistency, we'll number all the questions. Alrighty, so this study will not include many open-ended questions, but there would be an important open-ended question to ask, and especially too if we see that, if I saw that a student is bringing their grades up, I would like to ask them, like, has there been a time when you brought your grade up from doing poorly to doing better? What actions did the teacher do that helped to support you? What actions could the teacher and the school do to support your learning more? And the next step would be data analysis and how to process that. So, oops. Alrighty, so the first column would be the student's name. The next one would be question number 1, which would be their GPA. Number 2 would be how they feel about geology. Number 3 would be in monthly income. Number 4 would be the number of persons per household. That way we could calculate the income per family member. And then number 6 would be how they feel about the course, and so on and so on. And it also would include how many hours they spend studying, how they feel about EduCares, and also information about alternative work packets. And then another useful tool would be Aeries. So some pieces of information we just could collect directly from Aeries. Like as you can see here, it has their class score right here. So information like class score we could collect from Aeries. Also, their current GPA we could also see on Aeries, but yeah, there's a lot of information that's available on Aeries. And then also another cool feature of Aeries would be to email missing work packets to students and parents. Alrighty, so data analysis, that would be the next step. And if we remember from statistics class, mean is the sum of all the values divided by the number of values. And then also it would be really important to report the variance with the mean, because we want to know if each change is statistically significant. And in order to compute, there's a proper formula to compute the variances. But the fun thing is that Google Sheets would do it for us. So basically, to compute a mean, I would highlight the data set, and then I would put equals and then average, and then it would calculate it for me. And then to highlight the variance, I would just do the same thing but type variance or VAR, and it would calculate it for it. It would calculate the value for me. So for example, if I were to use these like sample GPA values, and then the variance for these would be 1.25. So the way that I would report that would be that the mean GPA would be 2.5 plus or minus 1.25. So if we experienced a change beyond 1.25, it would be statistically significant. Alrighty, another important step would be to graph results. So in order to see correlation, we're going to have to graph one result versus another result. So we're going to choose one variable to be the independent variable, and then the dependent variable is going to be the y value. And it's important to remember that the y value depends on the x value. And a possible data set would be effects of income on GPA. So then the independent variable would be income, and the dependent variable or the y value would be GPA. And it's possible to set up the data table to do that for us. So we would just select the chart, and then when we define the data table, we would define the x-axis to be income, and then we would define the y-axis to be GPA. Alrighty, and then another important feature would be that this also gives us the R value, or the correlation coefficient. So if we get an R value of -1, it would be a negative correlation, +1 would be a positive correlation, and 0 would be no correlation. Alrighty, and I would say it's really important for me to remember the goals, right? Which is building relationships with my students and enhancing student outcomes. Thank you so much.